You're listening to the Spare No Arrows podcast, a show that equips Christians to stand against our anti-Christian culture. My name's Cody Lawrence, and I'm here to discuss culture, politics, theology, and building Christendom for the glory of God with courage, biblical truth, and sound doctrine. Welcome back. I thought to myself, hey, I'm driving 30 minutes to go get my hair cut, so why not do a car cast? There's a lot of stuff that I want to talk about, there's actually a lot of stuff that I don't want to talk about, but I feel the need to talk about it anyway. And it's because if you've been following for any amount of time, you know that something that I care about is kind of keeping my finger on the pulse of the spirit of the age. It's helpful, I think, to know where culture is headed and where culture is. For our families, for our churches, to properly defend them, to properly defend our family, to properly defend the people in our lives that we have influence over, we need to at least have a cursory knowledge of what's going on in the world. If there is a missile headed right for you, you should know that, hey, we need to go seek shelter. If there is, some kind of impending doom, if it is obvious that something bad is happening, that there is this infection that is spreading, it is, I think, your responsibility as a father or as a husband or as a pastor or just, as a human being. Any single person, I think, has this responsibility, and it's the responsibility to guard yourself against threats, of course, right? Obviously. Which means that we need to have at least a cursory knowledge of the threats that are happening in the world, primarily ideologically, right? And that's kind of what I tried to do with my podcast. It's not contrary to popular belief, just about talking bad about preachers. It's not it at all. It just so happens that often preachers, false teachers, big name people, people in the public sphere, they are good examples of problems that are happening in the culture because people like to get their ears tickled, and people in positions of power or people with platforms will take advantage of that. And so that's what I'm trying to do here on my podcast. It's what I've always tried to do. I want to equip people to see the problems so they don't experience those problems themselves. Because in a lot of cases and a lot of the things that I talk about, I was there. I experienced these problems personally until I saw the truth, or I was I was very close to being involved in the kinds of things that I'm talking about. Like I was this close to being Big Eva, that kind of thing. I followed a lot of the woke right type people. If you like the phrase or not, you know exactly who I'm talking about. I liked a lot of those guys, and a lot of people who like those guys or who like Big Eva, this is how this happens. You like somebody, they go off the cliff, and you follow them, and that's not a good thing to do. One of the things that I wanted to talk about was there was a clip, since Jordan Peterson is kind of a popular topic lately because of his comment on psychopaths. I want to talk about that too. But a clip kind of popped up that was from an interview that Joe Rogan did with Jordan Peterson a couple years ago. And Jordan Peterson was describing essentially cultural contagion and how it happens in cycles. Jordan Peterson said that, and he knows these things. I respect Jordan Peterson in a lot of ways. I think he should not be trying to teach people about the Bible. But in other areas, I think he has a lot of really good things to say, and he always has. I listen to a lot of his lectures, and I read Maps of Meaning, and I read 12 Rules for Life. I own 12 More Rules for Life, haven't read it yet. But I really like Jordan Peterson as a person. His reluctance to see the literal truth of the Bible while admitting the metaphorical truth of the Bible is a little frustrating. But that isn't necessarily to say that the value that he is finding in the Bible is not there. I just think he's missing the forest for the trees, it seems, in a lot of cases. But anyway, what Jordan Peterson is excellent on, obviously, is psychology, because he's a psychologist. And he has had a clinical practice for many years, and he taught psychology for many years, so he knows what he's talking about. And to avoid just appealing to authority, I'm not saying because Jordan Peterson says it must be true, but I just wanted to kind of qualify the fact that I like Jordan Peterson. for people who don't appreciate that a freedom of conscience exists and we're actually allowed to listen to people that other people don't like. It's a totally fine thing to do, which is actually going to come into play later in our topic. But anyway, what Jordan Peterson said in this Joe Rogan podcast was that there are these cultural contagions, and they tend to happen in cycles. Like there was cutting. Cutting became popular among teenage girls, and he said especially this happens a lot among mid to late teenagers. I would say teenagers are especially impressionable, but this can happen in general. But we see it most obviously in teenagers. So like girls in government schools start cutting themselves. They come with scars on their wrists, and they're like, this helps me have control over my life, whatever. And so other girls, or other boys too, impressionable people, they will start doing it too, and then everybody starts doing it, and it is this negative pathology, cultural contagion.
And so teenagers are wired to go along with the crowd, and then if the crowd is offering something pathological, that happens all the time. You get a psychological epidemic. And I knew that. I told you. I told the Senate this in 2017. And why did I know? Well, I knew the literature. We've tracked psychological epidemics going back 300 years. 300 years. Here's some of them. Multiple personality disorder. It cycles in society. Disappears, then there's one case, then it spreads like mad. Then there's multiple personality disorder everywhere. Teenage girls mostly. Then people get skeptical about it, and it dies. And maybe it disappears for a whole generation or two. Then a case pops up. Just does this. That's happened for 300 years. Cutting was a psychological epidemic. Bulimia was a psychological epidemic. Anorexia was a psychological epidemic. The satanic daycare ritual abuse accusations that came out in the 1980s, that was a psychological epidemic. And the rule basically is that if you confuse people about a fundamental element of their identity, then those who are already so confused they're barely hanging on are going to fall prey to that, and all hell's going to break loose.
The trans stuff, really took off. It was popular on TikTok, maybe partially because China was making it popular on TikTok. That's an interesting rabbit hole to go down. They absolutely do change their algorithm because TikTok has a sister app. It's the same app in China, but the algorithm in America is very different from the algorithm in China. If you didn't know this is a really fun fact. There are a lot of videos of people just swiping through the Chinese TikTok, and there is no videos like the stuff that pops up for us on Chinese TikTok. It's primarily educational and informative stuff, and that's it. And TikTok here in America like epitomizes mental illness. So anyway, the point is these cultural fads happen, and they happen primarily among young people, although anybody can take part in them, and they're bad and they're dangerous, of course, right? And so because they go in cycles and these things just keep happening over and over, we have to realize, so what is the cultural contagion today? Back in 2020, it was really popular to be, and basically a lot, like another interesting thing is that the source of a lot of this cultural contagion is from people who think they are going against the flow. They think they're being countercultural or revolutionaries. The goth girls in high school who cut themselves thought, I'm unique. I'm being, and I knew these people. That was popular when I was in high school. And so they were like, this helps me have control over my life, and I'm unique, and I'm an individual, and I'm cool. So there was absolutely a countercultural aspect to the cutting thing, and there absolutely is to the trans thing. It's about I'm an individual, I'm a whatever. And then in 2020 it happened with social justice stuff, and it happened with the trans stuff. It's a contagion. It infects people's minds, and it seems as though there is rationality stops mattering in these cases. Rationality ceases to matter to these people, when otherwise they might be totally reasonable people in other areas of life. And I think the same thing is happening today with the stuff that I've been talking about on my podcast, with the woke right stuff. It's getting worse, and hey, I have been harping on this stuff on my podcast for the better part of a year. This is important. I think you ought to know about this stuff. People, I think, especially fathers, really ought to know about this stuff, because it is infectious. I've had multiple people approach me, actually, and they're like, regarding the Corey Mahler, James White debate, multiple people were like, whoa, is that real? I said something about it, and they're like, no, I saw that. That's fake, right? And it's like, no. They really are debating if God can sanctify black people as much as white people. That really is a real thing that people really believe, right? And this is completely consistent with the stuff that I have been saying for months and months. And really, I've just been proven right again and again over the years. So one of the topics today that I wanted to discuss that is kind of an outpouring of this cultural contagion is something that a fellow named Wesley Todd said. He is the co-host of a popular podcast that I'm really trying to talk less about, but they just keep being so stupid that it's hard not to. But anyway, I'm not going to spend a whole episode on this. I just want to bring up this one thing as an example of this cultural contagion. This emotionally manipulating young people. I mean, and as a tangent, that is predatory behavior. That's like child predator behavior. There are very evil people who like control. They like clicks on their stupid social media pages. They want to make their shows look good for the sponsor so that they can be given more money. And so they want to really rack up those views. And the way that you rack up the views is by being as controversial as possible. You and then rallying a very faithful group of stupid followers underneath you who, or maybe not stupid, but you just manipulate them into being blind, who will do anything you say and believe anything you say. They'll do whatever you ask, and they'll believe anything you say. And I think that's what a lot of these people are doing. But anyway, Wesley Todd, what's he known for? He's known for enjoying... I was thinking about this earlier, and I was debating on whether or not I should bring it up on my podcast. But I think it's an interesting logic experiment. Wesley Todd, his boss, the host of the podcast, compared his crotch size to Wesley Todd's on this podcast, and they were laughing about it, and it was funny. And at one of my podcasts, I said that kind of seems like sexual harassment, and sexual harassment is legally defined as unwanted sexual advances or comments coming from somebody. And one option is that it was sexual harassment if it wasn't wanted, but the other option is that maybe it was wanted, Maybe he did want those, sexual comments about comparing quote-unquote crotch sizes from his boss and also pastor, in which case, I wonder, like, is there a label for people who enjoy, like men, especially men maybe with like lisps, it's not a lisp, it's not like it's a speech impediment, but it's like, he talks like this. What do we call men who enjoy sexual comments and advances from other men? We call those people gay. So either Wesley Todd is, and this is tragic, either he is tragically a sexual harassment victim or he's gay. I don't know. And the key of the argument here is, was it wanted? Because it really did happen. Was it wanted or was it not wanted? If it was not wanted, it is sexual harassment. If it was wanted, then why is he wanting comments like that from other guys? Seems like really there's no way to get out of that logically. I don't know. Maybe you can figure out a way to weasel out of it. But anyway, what he said was, I think this started with Corey Mahler, which is the guy who was debating James White. Oh, it absolutely did. And something that I've been saying is that their content overlaps. A lot of the woke right people, like the Joel Webbin crowd, the Ogden group, Andrew Isker, all those guys, their content has increasingly overlapped with Stone Choir, Corey Mahler. Corey Mahler, if you don't know who he is, has said Hitler was Jesus Christ's faithful servant. He claims in the debate topic that's coming up that blacks cannot be sanctified as much as white people. And so he's this kind of person. If you can believe any kind of vile, awful nonsense along those lines, he probably believes it, or he's probably said it. So this is how awful Corey Mahler is. So he made some kind of claim that a high-ranking Nazi officer who murdered his family, like strangled his children to death because the communists were invading, to protect his family was a heroic thing to do. So in other words, murdering your children to prevent suffering, to prevent them from suffering, is a heroic, Christian, wonderful, moral thing to do. And it would be one thing if Corey Mahler just said that alone. But then Wesley Todd reiterated, said the same thing. He said, yeah, that is, it'd be a hard decision, but I think it would be the right one. It'd be a good thing to do to murder your kids. And so I've been talking about for a long time the woke right? And they're to define this, because people always yell at me when I say woke right. They're like, "There's woke right doesn't exist. There's no such thing. You can't be woke and right." It's like, exactly, you're right. Yes, we agree. We're actually on entirely the same page. That's something liberals say. Well, here I am, a conservative, and I hate Marxism. I am warning against wokeness, and that's something that liberals say. What liberals actually say is they are deceptive and they manipulate the meanings of words to control people. And so woke means woke. And so the only thing that woke right means, that I'm trying to point out, is that we actually agree. You cannot be woke and right. Right. Correct. They're just woke people, but they're claiming to be right. And I totally agree. There's no such thing as those people. They're just woke. It is an inherent contradiction to be woke and on the right at the same time. So anyway, that's what these people are. They're woke. And further evidence of this is the fact that they are openly arguing exactly the same as an abortionist. Also, by the way, Wesley Todd, he doesn't have 10,000 hours. We heard them say this on their show. I don't have 10,000 hours to devote to studying the Holocaust. So I would never make the claim that 6 million Jews died. I just don't have enough information. You can't make me. I don't have 10,000 hours. If somebody who has spent 10,000 hours studying this, maybe they can tell me. So he doesn't have 10,000 hours to spend studying. He can't confidently say how many Jews died in the Holocaust, but he can confidently say that he would murder his family if the commies were invading. Like that's some kind of tremendous heroic action, murdering your family. But what we see, if we have eyes, is that this is actually exactly the same argument that woke people make about abortion. Well, it's okay to murder your baby if you're going to prevent them from suffering. That's okay. Now, the funny thing is, this is actually worse than what abortionists argue. And it's because a lot of people are like, hey, if that baby was born, would you shoot them in the head? And a lot of, the leftists, they're absolutely appalled at that. They're like, no way. Well, I'm not saying they're not saved, although it is becoming increasingly easy to ask that question. Are these people really saved? Would a person who says it's okay to murder your children, bold-faced, are they really saved? I don't know. It's not up to me. I can't say that. But what I can say is that this is completely, utterly inexcusable and inconsistent with Christianity, completely. That's what I can say. These people should be being church disciplined. They should be excommunicated if they hold to these beliefs. But they're not, because they are not a part of any denomination. They're a part of an independent church where all of the elders and everybody in the church all agree with each other, and they all hate responsibility. Because, Joel Webbin's the pastor. So this is and another thing. It's not just Corey Mahler. It's not just Wesley Todd. It is... lots of people were like, this went viral, that these people are saying this. Like how disgusting and awful it is that a person could possibly think, who claims to be on the right, who claims to be right-wing, claims to be conservative, although they've abandoned the label of conservative. Now at this point, they prefer the term nationalist. They see conservatives as weaklings, which is kind of funny. It's like good that they've abandoned the the term conservative. It's not just them. There are swaths of mostly young men who are following. They're like, no, yeah, that's a heroic thing to do. Oh, whatever. This is a perfect sign of this cultural contagion that is absolutely corrupting our culture right now, that we need to be aware of, and we need to do something about it. We need to be equipped to argue against this stuff whenever we see it in our environment. We need to be very well equipped by knowing the issues and knowing what these people think, and that's what I'm trying to help you do right now. They see it as some kind of heroic deed. They absolutely are blind to the inconsistency about abortion. Well, it's like, it's okay in this case because we're preventing them from suffering. When you abort a baby, it doesn't actually prevent them from suffering. You're just killing a baby. Now, that isn't true at all. You actually are preventing suffering from happening by murdering a baby that's aborted, but you're also preventing everything else, right? So like, you obviously, yes, you're preventing death, prevents future suffering, okay? But that does not mean it is okay. It does not mean it's justifiable. Biblically, I can't think of a single example, like anywhere in the Bible, where a person is killed out of mercy. Death is, as far as I know, like, you can give me an example if you think I'm wrong, but death, I think, in the Bible is always a punishment when it is commanded. I don't think there's any good example, at all, of someone killing someone else out of mercy. It's always done out of malice. We're also told in the Bible that the mercy of the wicked is cruel. The mercy of the wicked is cruel. This goes against euthanasia. Like, euthanasia is cruelty. Even if it's like, oh, he's really sick, it would prevent some suffering. We just can't do that. We cannot take people's lives into our hands like that. Which also, incidentally, I think ties into their twisted version of Christian nationalism, which is more akin to secular nationalism, Marxist nationalism, than it is anything resembling Christianity, because their law is not Scripture. They are fundamentally thinking that they have control over Scripture. They're whatever kind of Christian prince / dictator that doesn't even have to be Christian has total rule over the law, and I mean, so this makes sense. This is consistent. They don't actually care about God's law. They can say, well, I know God's law says thou shalt not murder, but here's why it's actually okay in this case, because of the commies. Because the commies are coming. They have a lot more in common with the Nazis. I mean, obviously, they know they have a lot in common with the Nazis. They wish they were Nazis. But they have a lot more in common with the communists also. Hitler had a lot more in common with Marx, even though he hated Marx. That's true. Hitler wasn't a Marxist because he hated Marx. Okay, the ideology at the foundation of Marxism is identical to the ideology that undergirds Nazism. What was national? They were patriotic. They loved their nation. Yeah, and communists love their nation, right? They want to dominate you and control you, and they want their nation to prosper, just like everybody else. But it's evil, right? And it is ultimately rooted in rebellion against God. It's pure evil. And this also brings back to Jordan Peterson. The other, just so you might have heard the term Machiavellianism being thrown out. And Machiavellianism is a political/social philosophical theory that basically says the ends justify the means. It's utilitarianism, it's pragmatism, all these words kind of mean the same thing. There's this idea that basically if somebody is ruling, if you are a ruler of some kind, you're able to go above the law in order to get good stuff done. Machiavellianism says that a ruler can do evil things, and really they're not evil because they're meant to accomplish something good, so it's okay. It's not really evil. But what it amounts to is that a person can do something evil if they think it will have a good consequence. This is Machiavellianism. And something that Jordan Peterson said recently that went viral was he was on Joe Rogan again, actually. And they were talking about the woke right people, this contagion that has now infected people who think they're right wing, or people who just up until they were corrupted with this stuff were actually right wing. And Jordan Peterson said that basically there is a small percentage of the population, around 4%, who exhibit a certain collection of negative personality traits.
The problem is that 4 to 5% of the population, something like that, is cluster B, that's the DSM-5 terms, histrionic, narcissistic, antisocial, psychopathic, or they have dark tetrad traits. They're Machiavellian, they're sadistic. That's about 4%. Okay, so the question is, how do these people maneuver? And the answer is they go to where the power is, and they adopt those ideas, and they put themselves even on the forefront of that.
Right.
But the ideas are completely irrelevant.
Right.
All they're doing is they're the Pharisees. They're the modern version of the Pharisees. They're the people who use God's name in vain, right? As they proclaim moral virtue.
Yes.
Doesn't matter whether it's right or left or Christian or Jewish or Islam. They invade the idea space, and then they use those ideas as false weapons to advance their narcissistic advantage.
Yes.
And so then you have the problem, and the right's going to face this more and more, particularly because the left had to face it when they were in powers.
Yes.
How do you identify the psychopathic parasites, 4% of the population, who are clothed in your clothing and waving your flags, but who are only in it for narcissistic benefit?
What's really interesting is that there was a podcast from Andrew Isker, popular woke right figure, and C.J. Ingle, whoever that is, I don't know who he is, but a friend of Andrew Isker, and they were talking about why Christians need to be more Machiavellian.
I think the right is still very weak on strategy. I think they're weak on Machiavellianism. I think that they, this is one of the things that the classical liberals, the post-war consensus bros, like they hate Machiavellianism.
Yeah, I had a, in the I think I can say this, so I won't say any names, so no one will figure out who I was talking to. But in the green room, I was having a conversation with one of the speakers at the conference, just about, or actually a few of them, just about like pro-life strategy.
Yeah.
And how like Trump and Vance like so obviously just lied through their teeth about their actual position on abortion.
Mhm.
Right? Like they just flat out lied. I'm so glad that we had a president who did not tell the truth on that issue, right? Like that's the kind of Machiavellianism, right, you're describing that I think, you know, I mean, people maybe will be mad at me for saying this, but I think like we should support that.
Yeah, I support that.
Christians need to do more evil things to get good stuff done. We need to be more Machiavellian. We need to be willing to do awful, evil stuff. Jordan Peterson said there are this small group of people that exhibits these really evil traits, or like bad personality traits, and then when you put them together, they, and those kinds of people have a tendency to want to manipulate, and they're willing to do bad things to make themselves either look good or get into positions of power, have more control over people, and these people, no matter what the movement is, if it's a left movement, if it's a right movement, you know, whatever movement it is that they can go into and control people in, they do. And he was like, that's what I think people are doing in this woke right movement. There are and actually, narcissism. It was psychopathy, narcissism, sadism, and Machiavellianism. That was the four. Ironically, these people are actually pushing Machiavellianism, which is entirely contrary to Christianity, right? It's that is the opposite of what Christians should be doing. Christians cannot take the law into their own hands. They cannot take justice into their own hands. It's totally evil. So anyway, Andrew Torba, another popular figure in this exact same community, he went nuts on X, basically saying like, Jordan Peterson's trying to isolate you. He wants you to think that you're 4% of the population. They're trying to control you. This is a common liberal tactic. And it's like, well, I kind of agree with what Andrew Torba is saying. This is a common liberal tactic to want to isolate people and to manipulate people and fool them. Except what this actually applies to is Torba and his crowd. A lot of them were so offended at what Jordan Peterson said, but what Jordan Peterson was talking about was that there are like clinical, in studies, in like actual personality examinations, it turns out that about 4% of the people have this dark tetrad characteristic. These 4 negative personality traits, very high, and they're in the same people, about 4%. And what Torba is doing is assuming that Jordan Peterson is talking about his follower base. How insane is it that you think, yes, when Jordan Peterson refers to psychopaths, narcissists, sadists, and Machiavellianists, he's actually talking about my followers. That kind of seems narcissistic, doesn't it? Or if he doesn't truly believe this, perhaps he's just manipulating his followers for power and control, which would actually seem quite psychopathic and Machiavellian. Interesting. And if it's to gain power and control and improve his platform at the cost of other people, that's actually rather sadistic, don't you think? So maybe Andrew Torba himself matches these 4 personality traits. I wouldn't be very surprised if him and Andrew Isker and Joel Webbin and, you know, all their buddies, all these people who associate with each other, who have, you know, totally changed their tune over the past few years, as soon as this Jew hate stuff started taking off and becoming popular, they are these people. They obviously can't be trusted. And we should really guard ourselves against this kind of thing. It all fits together a little too perfectly. But kind of the main point that I want to make is there is this social contagion that's happening. It comes in cycles. The solution to the social contagion, as always, is calm, reasonable argumentation, knowing what they believe, not misrepresenting them. Even if they say you're misrepresenting me, like, if you honestly represent a person often, they will be like, well, you're just misrepresenting me because that sounds bad. It's like, no, maybe it sounds bad because I really think I'm representing you properly, and maybe it just sounds bad because what you believe is actually false. That's actually a possibility. Sheesh. So the solution is be calm, be willing to argue with these people calmly and using reason, and maybe they can't be reasoned with, and that's okay, but at least prepare your people, prepare your family, prepare your church against this stuff, because this is the cultural contagion of the day. And if we're not prepared, it's already corrupting so many people. This is why James White has felt the need to actually debate somebody as atrocious who just should be, ignorant people. Give this guy a platform. Ignorance platforms Corey Mahler is a good way to say that. And it should be absolutely obvious that this stuff is false, but it's not, because reason in situations like this is thrown out the window until, a few months or a couple years from now. The next social contagion will happen, and reason is going to be thrown out the window on another thing. So if you, so just be steady, don't, if you are tempted to follow these people, if you're one of the reasonable people who are like, that I kind of benefit from them sometime, there are other places you can go look. You don't have to follow these people. You don't have to. They don't actually have anything to offer you that can't be found better somewhere else. So just stop listening to them. I think it is useless to listen to these people. You're free to. You can listen to whoever you want to, but I don't think it's good for your soul. Even the good stuff they say, and they really do have a broken clock is right twice a day. Satan can say true things, right? But it's not like, well, I follow Satan because he said some good stuff sometimes. Oh, it's pitiful. It's crazy. So equip yourself against this so you're not infected. Your family, your church isn't infected against this stuff, which also means that we have to have a cursory knowledge of these things. We should be educated. And that doesn't mean you have to spend 10,000 hours studying this topic, but hopefully, podcasts like mine can help educate you on things like this and prepare you for the things you're going to see out in the world. And if you haven't seen them yet, I would be absolutely shocked if you haven't seen these kind of things yourself. But if you haven't, you will. You absolutely will. It's picking up steam. And I don't know where it's going to end. But what I do know is that eventually it's going to devour itself, just like every other evil ideology, and life will go on just like normal. But just because it's ridiculous, just because it's stupid, that does not absolve us from the responsibility of resisting it and protecting ourselves against it. Because if we just blow this off like, yeah, that's stupid, it's ridiculous, then, and we don't see it as the threat that it really is, then that is what I think opens the door for people to actually fall into these things. We need to name names. We need to actually talk about the ideology for what it is, and then be willing to have reasonable discussions about these things to determine what the truth actually is. Okay, hopefully that was enlightening, helpful, maybe a little bit entertaining. I'll catch you next time. God bless.